Hi again, Kita Gimel. I am going to read you the first part of the Passover story. All right, this starts after Joseph. Remember, Joseph became really important in the Egyptian government, and he was able to help his brothers and his father during the famine. And he stayed in Egypt, and they all stayed in Egypt. And Joseph died, and some time passed. The story is a little vague about how much time passed. I want to bring up that this happens before the golden calf story. We took that out of order because of our Share Shabbat. That was what the Torah portion was for that Shabbat. But this actually was read earlier this year in like January or February. I'm not exactly sure. But anyway, it happens after Joseph, and the story begins. A new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And some of the commentators say that the Pharaoh, the king, they called their king Pharaoh, didn't know Joseph, like really didn't know Joseph, or that he did know Joseph, he had heard of Joseph, but didn't care about what Joseph had done. So, difference of opinion there. And he said to his people, the king said to his people, the Israelite people are too numerous for us. Let us deal with them so that they may not increase. Otherwise, if there is a war, they may join with our enemies and fight us. So they set taskmasters over the Israelites and forced them into labor, otherwise known as slavery. But still the Israelites increased. So the Egyptians made the work harder, and the king of Egypt spoke to the Hebrew midwives, Shiphrah and Puah. The midwives. So the midwives, what is a midwife? A midwife is someone who helps women give birth to babies. So they actually help in the delivery of the babies. And so the Pharaoh said to Shiphrah and Puah, when you help the Hebrew women give birth, if it is a boy, kill him. And if it is a girl, let her live. And so when we read this in the class the other day, someone brought up that maybe it would have made more sense for them to kill the girls because they could grow up and have more babies. But for whatever reason, they kill the boys, or they're supposed to kill the boys, and it kind of foreshadows what's going to happen with the 10th plague. So now Shiphrah and Puah, some of the commentators say that they are actually Jewish, like they are when they say Hebrew midwives, they mean they're Israelites. But some other commentators say they're referred to as Hebrew midwives because they're midwives for the Hebrew women, but they're actually Egyptian. So again, we have a difference of opinion. Either way, these women are going to be pretty amazing because they're not going to do the terrible thing that Pharaoh has asked. The story says Shiphrah and Puah feared God and did not do as the king asked, telling him that they could never get there in time, so that by the time they got to the women, they got called, so they would get a call, or not a call like a phone, but someone would get to a message to them that someone was ready to give birth. They claimed that by the time they get there, the woman had already given birth and that they couldn't do anything to kill the baby. And so the Pharaoh figured he'd continue another way. Pharaoh said to all his people, every boy that is born, throw into the Nile River, but let every girl live. And so in this situation, it tells of a man and a woman from the tribe of Levi. And remember, that means that they're descendants from Levi, who was one of Joseph's brothers, one of Jacob's sons. So when a man and a woman from the tribe of Levi gave birth to a son, and when the woman saw how beautiful he was, she hid him for 3 months. I like to think that even if he was ugly, she would have still hid him and taken care of him. But apparently we learned that he is beautiful. When she couldn't hide him any longer, she got a basket. The word that's used is ark, the same word that is used to describe Noah's ark. So it's a vessel that will save the people in it, in this case, the baby in it. So she got a basket for him, and she put her child into it and placed it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. And his sister, whose name is Miriam, but we are not told that yet, stayed at a distance to watch and learn what would happen to him. The daughter of Pharaoh came down to bathe in the Nile while her maidens walked along the river. She saw the ark among the reeds and sent her slave girl to fetch it. When she saw there was a child, a boy, crying, she took pity and said, "This must be a Hebrew child." And then his sister said, "Shall I go get you a Hebrew nurse to take care of him for you?" And Pharaoh's daughter answered, "Yes." So the girl went and got the child's mother, and Pharaoh's daughter told her that she would pay her wages to take care of the child. So, first of all, we just learned that Pharaoh's daughter knows that this is a Hebrew child, and yet she agrees to save the baby, which counters what her father has ordered. And not only that, she lets the baby's mother take care of the baby, and she even pays her, which there's slavery going on. We assume she didn't really have to do that. So this is a really amazing act where the women are taking care of Moses, and in a sense they're taking care of the Jewish people. And so we imagine that during this time when Moses' mother, whose name is Yocheved, and we don't know that yet because we're not told it yet, but we're going to be told it later. And by the way, just a little trivia, my real Hebrew name is not Yonit, it's Yocheved. And if you ever hear me have an Aliyah blessing before the Torah, you'll hear me called as Yocheved and not Yonit, because that's my real Hebrew name. Okay, so when the child grew up, when Moses grew up, the mother brought him to Pharaoh's daughter, who made him her son. She adopted him as her own, and she named him Moses, explaining, "I drew him out of the water." We're going to assume that in Egyptian that Moses means "I drew him out of the water," or something like that. Sometime after that, when Moses had grown up, he went out to his people. So remember, he knows he's Jewish, he knows he's a Hebrew or an Israelite, but he also knows that he's being raised as an Egyptian. But you can tell from this that he believes his real people are the Israelites. So he goes out to his people and he witnessed their labors. Here he is in this privileged place in the Pharaoh's daughter's palace, and his people are slaves. And so he sees them in their forced labor, and he sees an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, one of his kinsmen, one of his family. Like, not family, but, larger family, like, "You're my people." And he turned this way and that way, and seeing no one about, he struck down the Egyptian and hid him in the sand. He killed him and hid him in the sand. When he went out the next day, he found 2 Hebrew slaves fighting, and he decided who he thought was to blame, and he asked the offender, the one who was to blame, "Why do you strike your fellow?" And the person answered, "Who made you the ruler over us? Are you going to kill me like you killed the Egyptian?" Moses was frightened that people knew what he had done, and when Pharaoh learned of it, he wanted to kill Moses. But Moses fled from Pharaoh and arrived in the land of Midian and sat down beside a well. So Moses is no longer a stranger in Egypt. He's now a stranger in Midian, another place. So I read this line where he arrived in land of Midian and sat down beside a well. I'm going to stop there because we know when there's a well involved that there's going to be romance. And wait, I just have to show you who just sat on my lap. This is Maisie. Maisie, say hi. Oops, there we go. Wow. All right, and that's my husband coming in. There's a lot going on. All right, bye guys. Look for the next video for part 2.